Now, the year marked the watershed moment in the history of Kenya's education history. It was the final year for learners to spend 8 years in primary and sign off with the Kenya Certificate of Primary Education KCPE examinations. Now, it also marked the end of the 844 system of education at the primary level. For all the years of its existence, the system attracted praise and criticism in equal measure. And I'll leave you with this feature. I'll see you at 1 p.m. with the latest stories making headlines in the country.
The first 844 class was examined in 1985, the year the Kenya Certificate of Primary Education KCPE was inaugurated, with the 2023 class signing off a 39-year journey that has examined a staggering 26 million candidates. From a small class of 360,000 candidates when it began in 1985 to a whopping 1.4 million at its exit in 2023, KCPE has been some journey.
The candidature has been diverse, with candidates of refugee status and non-citizens within Kenya sitting the examination. Indeed, from the year 2005 to 2008, KCPE was offered to South Sudan nationals of the Kaunda Mountains region. In total, 103,000 non-citizens have been certified after sitting the KCPE.
Almost 70% of the adult population today went through the KCPE. It has given us the necessary experience, and as we were developing the competence-based education, we have had a lot of assessments on the knowledge-based, the 844 system, and the way that the world is going into areas of critical thinking, areas of application of competencies, ensuring that we develop skills as we build on knowledge, because knowledge is still very important.
That my mission is not to sing KCPE digest. Rather, I am here to celebrate and remind my fellow Kenyans that we are only transitioning from a structure of education that has served us well for 4 decades to one that will serve us even better. I must further emphasize to Kenyans that the midwives of the new shift in the education structure to their competence-based curriculum will mainly be the products of the KCPE examination, totaling 39 cohorts.
The exit of the KCPE and 844 system of education at primary level fully ushers in the competency-based curriculum and the competency-based assessment, CBA.
Now that we are done with KCPE and 844, that no learner will ever again be classified as a failure simply because we were assessed on a parameter that they were not necessarily talented in.
The KCPE journey was always punctuated with anxiety, stiff competition, apprehension of failure, and annual prayer days for candidates. The exam was used for placement of learners, determining admission to national, provincial, and district schools that were later classified as national, extra-county, county, and sub-county schools.
And KCPE has mainly been driven as a summative, norm-referenced exam. That means the children have to wait for 8 years before we can measure them, before we can know how well they are doing in school. And that is why the CBC system is coming in to say, yes, we need to assess them at the end of the cycle in grade 6, but let us give ourselves a chance to know how the children are doing as early as grade 3.
Contrary to the final years of KCPE that saw private schools dominating the top-performing places, the formative years were dominated by public primary schools, such as Olympic in Kibera. While that was largely due to the high education standards in public schools, which gave way to just a handful of private schools in the 80s and 90s, by the time KCPE was exiting, the tide had changed in favor of private schools, as many parents avoided public primary schools whose quality is perceived low. In sharp contrast, competition for top public national secondary schools remain high for learners from both public and private primary schools.
KCPE has been a very high-stakes exam, especially because of the way we organized our secondary education. We have national schools, extra-county schools, county schools, sub-county schools, and you know every child's dream is to end up in a national school. In the CBC system, we are saying that we are organizing secondary education along the lines of pathways and tracks. So the child is being assessed to find out their potential, to find out what their strength is, to find out what their interest is. So the stakes are low.
Over the years, the number of examinable subjects varied as informed by periodic curriculum reviews. These saw such subjects as agriculture, home science, music and art and craft scrapped, only to be reintroduced under the CBC.
KCPE has served as well, but mainly it was aimed at placing children in Form 1, and that is why the stakes have been very high.
This is an apt illustration of the fact that many of us, many of the professionals serving our country at every sphere are indeed products of the KCPE examination whose rushed research I am announcing today.
While the final KCPE exam was marked out of a maximum of 500 marks, the first cohort was graded out of 600 marks before it was reviewed upwards to 700 4 years later in 1989. Meanwhile, technological advancement came with many changes, with the final KCPE results released in a totally different atmosphere. For instance, while in the early years, candidates' index numbers would be written on the desks using chalk, the latter days of KCPE witnessed a significant shift, with candidates identified through stickers mounted on their desks, bearing their photos and index numbers. Yet, the biggest shift was witnessed in the way candidates accessed their results. Earlier, district education officers would collect a result printout from Nairobi and head teachers would pick the results from district headquarters. The school heads would then photocopy and pin the results on school notice boards. In 2023, the candidates were able to access the results shortly after the announcements through their mobile phones. And while this is celebrated as a huge technological advancement, the same came with huge challenges which put the last KCPE exam results in complete disrepute. There were complaints of candidates receiving marks they did not score, while others received marks in subjects they did not sit during exams. The year also witnessed the biggest number of unregistered candidates allowed to sit the exams, a situation that led to many asking questions as to where 200,000 unregistered candidates came from.
How did you identify these candidates who are not registered? Where did they come from? That is my question. Did you call out to Kenyans and say that this is the last KCPE? Can you please submit? We are going to allow you to do your exam so that all Kenyans across the country would know that they can do it without being registered.
But I think because it was the rushed cohort, anybody who was out, anybody who thought he was going to be crossed out was able to come and enroll as a candidate, and we did not want to lock anybody out. So we had 177,000, which was 13% increase.
Yet, even as questions were raised on the credibility of the results, NEC and the Minister of Education maintained the discrepancies only affected results transmitted through mobile phones, but results on the portal were genuine and accurate.
Can you explain to us how this number, the variance of 200,000 came about? And then finally, CS, can you please tell me who is going to compensate these pupils who got wrong results and got psychologically tortured?
Actually, the correct result is obtained from the school portal. What you get from the SMS, any parent, the provisional results where you get the result slip is the correct information. So in the school portal, we never issued and we never gave out information which were not correct. So what was obtained in the portal was actually the correct information.
For the first time, national exams were printed locally, a situation that raised questions over why the government deviated from the long-standing tradition of printing national exams in the UK.
The circumstances under which the printing of the exams was transferred from the UK to Mombasa Road must be investigated. Kenyans must be told how the integrity of the exams was secured during the transfer from the UK to Mombasa Road and later to another printer in Asia. It is the right of Kenyans to know the cost of termination of the contract with the UK firm. Kenyans must be informed of how the Mombasa Road firm was identified and awarded the tender and if procurement laws were followed.
With it being the last KCPE, the government had to break away from the norm by introducing a supplementary exam to those who missed out on the exams. Shadrach Miti, KTN News.